Chosen one, this message did not find you by accident. You may have thought the last 40 days were only heavy. You may have thought you were just tired. But heaven was watching something deeper, because what you survived was not random, and what you refused to become again was the real test. You did not just walk through pressure, you walked through a hidden examination of your spirit. It did not look dramatic to other people. It looked like silence, delay, separation, and small moments where the old version of you was invited back. But this time, something inside you did not bow, and this is the part you need to hear carefully. God is amazed, but not for the reason you think. Heaven is not amazed because you suffered. Many people suffer and still return to the same chains. Heaven is amazed because suffering touched you, and the old pattern did not take the throne again. You almost reacted. You almost sent the message. You almost defended yourself to someone who had already decided to misunderstand you. You almost went back to the room, the habit, the conversation, the attachment, the fear. But something stopped you before you crossed that line. That moment was recorded. That moment mattered. It may have felt small to you. It may have looked like nothing to the world. But in the unseen realm, that one pause revealed that you were no longer ruled by the same wound that used to answer for you. Chosen one. The test was not only about what happened around you, it was about what happened inside you. It was about whether pain could still control your mouth. It was about whether delay could still make you panic. It was about whether silence could still make you abandon your identity. And you did something rare. You stayed. You stayed in obedience when your emotions wanted revenge. You stayed in faith when your eyes saw no proof. You stayed in your new self when the old self knocked on the door, wearing a familiar voice. This is why the number 40 matters in your spirit. Not because every detail had to look the same for every person, but because 40 represents a season where what is hidden gets revealed. It is a passage. It is a pressure chamber. It is a place where the false self begins to break. For some, the last 40 days felt like isolation. For others, it felt like confusion. For you, it may have felt like one strange thing after another, as if every weakness was being touched at once. But the truth is simple. Heaven was not trying to destroy you. Heaven was revealing you. You were being shown what no longer had permission to lead. Anger no longer had permission. Fear no longer had permission. Rejection no longer had permission. The need to be chosen by people no longer had permission, because God was teaching you that approval from heaven is enough. You thought you were losing people. You were losing access points. You thought you were becoming too sensitive. You were becoming more discerning. You thought the quiet meant abandonment. But the quiet was the classroom, and the lesson was whether you could trust God without constant confirmation. Listen to this carefully. The test did not announce itself. It came dressed as ordinary life, a late reply, a closed door, a memory that returned at night, a bill that pressed on your chest, a person who acted like they had power over your peace. You may not have answered with perfect words. You may not have felt strong every day. You may have cried, trembled, and asked God why it hurt so much. But the answer heaven was watching was not whether you felt pain. It was whether pain could still own you, and it could not. That is the miracle. It touched you, but it did not own you. It shook you, but it did not become your master. It tempted you, but it did not drag you all the way back into the identity you have been praying to outgrow. Chosen one. There were nights when you thought nothing was changing, but something was changing in silence. Your appetite was changing. Your tolerance was changing. Your discernment was changing. Your reaction time was changing, because the old impulse no longer had the same authority over your hands. That is why heaven is leaning close over your life. Not because you performed perfectly, not because you never doubted, not because you had no weak moments. Heaven is leaning close because you kept choosing alignment after pressure tried to pull you back into survival. But during this test, something shifted. You did not let survival make every decision. You did not let fear write every message. You did not let old scarcity tell you that God had forgotten your name. You paused long enough for a different voice to rise. This is what God was watching. Could you choose the quiet voice when the loud voice had history with you? Could you choose faith when fear had evidence? Could you choose restraint when your pain had a speech ready? Could you choose silence without calling it defeat? You did. Not every second, not every hour, but enough for heaven to know that the old ruler had been removed from the throne. Enough for the unseen record to show that your spirit had crossed a line that cannot be easily uncrossed. That is why this message had to reach you now. Because the test is over, but the meaning of the test is just beginning to open. If you misunderstand what happened, you may call it exhaustion and miss the confirmation. You may call it delay and miss the graduation. You are not just tired, you are transitioning. You are not just lonely, you are being separated with purpose. You are not just emotional, you are shedding a version of yourself that could not carry what God is about to place in your hands. There is a reason certain blessings could not meet you in the old state. Not because God was cruel, not because heaven was withholding love, but because abundance placed into an unhealed nervous system can feel like danger instead of gift, and you would have rejected what you prayed for. And heaven saw it. Heaven saw the day you did not chase. Heaven saw the night you did not collapse into the old habit. Heaven saw the morning you wanted to give up, but still stood up and carried your assignment with trembling hands. I saw the moment you almost quit and you stayed. I saw the moment you wanted to return and you paused. I saw the moment you could have cursed the process and you whispered for strength instead. I saw you when nobody else knew what it cost. Let those words settle. They are not here to flatter your ego. They are here to restore your strength. You did not pass this test so you could feel superior to anyone. You passed because heaven needed to show you that the person you kept praying to become is already rising. God noticed you before the test. God loved you before the test. But the test revealed something to you. It revealed that your spirit is stronger than the pressure that tried to rename you. It revealed that your obedience can survive silence. It revealed that your peace is becoming protected. This is only the opening of the message, because before you can understand why heaven is amazed, you must see the exact stages you survived. There were hidden doors inside these 40 days. There were tests inside tests. And one of them is where most chosen ones fail. Chosen one. The part most people miss is this. The test did not come as one giant storm. It came in stages. It came through quiet moments, delayed answers, strange pressure, and familiar voices that tried to pull you back into the version God was breaking off your life. The first hidden stage was the silence test. Heaven seemed quiet. You prayed, but the answer felt far. You waited, but the door did not move. And in that silence, the question was not whether God still loved you, but whether you would still trust Him without constant reassurance. This stage touched your deepest fear. It made you wonder if you had been forgotten. It made you question the timing. But silence was not rejection. Silence was training your spirit to stop depending on noise, so you could recognize a quieter kind of guidance. You passed more than you realize. You did not receive every answer. You did not understand every delay, but you still kept breathing, kept seeking, and kept choosing not to turn your pain into rebellion. That quiet obedience was seen in heaven. The second hidden stage was the delay test. This one felt personal. You saw signs, but no manifestation. You sensed movement, but no visible arrival. You felt close. Then everything paused again, and the pause tried to convince you that your promise had expired. But delay was not denial. Delay was revealing what still had power over your peace. Could you remain faithful when the timeline did not obey your expectation? Could you keep your heart soft when the calendar looked empty? Could you still believe when the evidence felt incomplete? The third hidden stage was the reaction test. This one came through people. Someone ignored you. Someone acted like they did not value your presence. Someone reopened a wound with one message, one absence, or one careless decision, and your old self knew exactly what to do. It wanted to explain. It wanted to expose. It wanted to send the long message. It wanted to make them understand the damage they caused. But you paused. That pause was power, because heaven was watching whether the wound still owned your response. Chosen one, this was one of the greatest signs that you passed. You stopped giving immediate access to your pain. You stopped letting every trigger become a command. You stopped letting someone else pull your spirit into a battlefield God had already told you to leave. The fourth hidden stage was the scarcity test. This stage touched your money, your future, and your sense of safety. It made you wonder if there would be enough, while pressure sat on your chest and whispered that God had forgotten your needs. Scarcity does not only speak through empty pockets, it speaks through fear. It says you are late. It says you missed your chance. It says God can bless others, but maybe not you. And when that voice gets loud, panic starts pretending to be wisdom. But during this test, you began to see the voice. You did not always silence it at once, but you noticed it. You noticed when fear was trying to lead, and when your mind was building a prison out of what had not happened yet. The fifth hidden stage was the loneliness test. This one may have hurt the most. You looked around and realized that not everyone could come with you. Some people only understood the old you, and some people only loved the version that stayed small enough to need approval. Loneliness tried to make you go back. It tried to make old rooms look warm again. But not every familiar place is safe, and not every empty season is punishment. Some empty spaces are holy protection, because God hides what the wrong hands would mishandle. You were not being abandoned. You were being separated. You were not being overlooked. You were being prepared. God was teaching you to stop calling every crowd a covering and every familiar voice a confirmation. The sixth hidden stage was the integrity test. This one was quiet. Nobody clapped for it. Nobody saw the private choices. Nobody knew when you could have taken the shortcut, twisted the story, exaggerated your pain, or used your suffering to demand attention. But heaven saw it. Heaven saw when you chose clean hands. Heaven saw when you did not use the secret you knew. Heaven saw when you let God defend you, instead of building a case in your own strength. That restraint was not weakness, it was maturity. The seventh hidden stage was the receiving test. This is the one many people never recognize. They think the test is only about surviving pain. But sometimes the greater test is whether you can receive goodness without guilt, peace without suspicion, and abundance without sabotaging it. You have been trained by hardship in ways you may not notice. When life has been heavy for too long, calm can feel strange. When lack has been familiar for too long, provision can feel unsafe. When disappointment has visited often, good news can make you brace for impact. That is why God had to work inside you before certain doors opened. He was not only preparing the blessing, He was preparing the receiver. He was teaching your spirit that you do not have to reject light because darkness stayed too long. The receiving test asked one quiet question. Can you allow God to be good to you without demanding proof that pain is still waiting nearby? Can you let peace stay? Can you stop apologizing for being chosen? Can you receive without preparing to lose it? If that question makes your chest feel tight, this part is for you. You are not weak because peace feels unfamiliar. But you must understand that survival was a season, not your permanent identity. You were trained by pressure, but you were not created to worship it forever. And this is why the last 40 days were so intense. Heaven was not only testing your behavior, heaven was revealing your patterns. The silence revealed your trust. The delay revealed your patience. The trigger revealed your restraint. The scarcity revealed your fear. The loneliness revealed your identity. The integrity test revealed your motives. The receiving test revealed your capacity. Together, these stages exposed what could not come with you before your next season could arrive with weight, responsibility, and favor attached to it. Now listen carefully. There is a reason your mind felt so loud during this test. When a chosen one has lived too long in survival, even divine guidance can feel distant. Fear becomes noisy. Worry becomes familiar. The body stays alert, and peace begins to feel foreign. This is not a failure. It is a signal. It means the old system inside you is trying to protect you from pain, even when God is trying to lead you into promise. That is why alignment matters, not just spiritually, but in the way your mind learns to become quiet again. Later, I will show you a simple 5-minute support that helps many chosen ones quiet that survival noise and return to a calmer state of receiving. It is not a replacement for faith. It is not a shortcut around obedience. It is a support for the part of you that is learning peace. And now that you know the stages, you need to understand the speed. Why did you pass faster than people who had more support, more money, more time, and more visible confirmation? The answer will make sense of the version of you that has been rising in silence. Chosen one. Now you need to understand why you passed faster than they expected. It was not because your road was easier. It was not because you had more support. It was not because your heart never shook, but because you changed the way pressure was allowed to speak through you. Something happened inside you that heaven could trust. You stopped treating every wound like a command. You stopped letting delay define your worth. And even when your emotions rose like a storm, your spirit began choosing a higher answer. They measured you by your past. They thought you would react the same way. They thought one trigger would pull you back. But they did not know God had been training you in hidden places where no audience could praise you or interrupt the work. You passed because you stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. That was not easy. Your old self wanted to prove the truth. Your old self wanted to correct every lie. But your new self understood that not every courtroom deserves your testimony. You had the words, you had the receipts, you had the memory of what really happened. And still, you placed your case in the hands of God, because peace became more valuable than being believed by the wrong people. That is a sign of passing. Not weakness, not fear, not avoidance. It is authority. The person who always needs to be understood is still chained to human approval, but the person who can walk clean without applause has entered a higher room. You passed because you stopped reacting to bait. Some people returned only to test your temperature. Some situations appeared only to see if you were still easy to move. A message, a look, a silence, a delay, and suddenly the old battlefield tried to call your name. But this time, you did not run to the battlefield as quickly. You paused. You breathed. You questioned the voice inside you before obeying it. That pause was not small, because it proved that the wound no longer had direct access to your decisions. Chosen one, that pause made heaven lean closer. It showed that you were not being ruled by impulse anymore. It showed that your spirit had learned to stand between the trigger and the response. That is where maturity lives. That is where favor can rest. You passed because you stopped calling every delay rejection. Before, a closed door may have felt like punishment. A slow answer may have felt like abandonment. But something in you began to understand that timing is not always an enemy. You still felt the ache. You still wanted proof. You still looked at the calendar and wondered why some things had not arrived. But you stopped letting the absence of evidence become the death of faith. You let patience become a form of worship. You passed because you stopped shrinking when abundance felt close. This may surprise you. Many chosen ones can survive storms, but panic when good things arrive. They know how to fight. They know how to endure. But receiving feels unfamiliar, so they sabotage the blessing. You began to notice that pattern. You began to feel the tension in your body when peace arrived. You began to see how quickly your mind searched for danger. And instead of obeying that fear immediately, you started asking a different question. What if this is not a trap? What if God is allowed to be good to me? What if I do not have to lose something every time I receive something? That question opened a door inside you that survival had kept locked for years. You passed because you started moving quietly without asking everyone to approve. You made choices in silence. You let certain people think what they wanted. You stopped announcing every inner shift to people who would only turn it into doubt. That quiet movement was sacred. God was teaching you to stop leaking energy into every conversation. He was teaching you to protect what was still forming. A seed does not need applause to grow, and a calling does not need public agreement to be real. This is why you passed faster than expected. You were not just enduring pressure, you were changing your relationship with pressure. Before, pressure made you perform. Now, pressure is making you pray. Before, pressure made you chase. Now, pressure is teaching you to stand. And this is the deeper truth. The test touched your mind, your body, and your nervous system. It revealed whether fear could still hijack your choices, and whether your inner world could return to peace after being shaken. When the mind is trapped in survival, everything feels urgent. Every delay feels dangerous. Every silence feels like rejection. Every financial concern feels like a prophecy of failure. But when the mind begins returning to calm, wisdom can be heard without panic screaming over it. God was not shaming you for needing provision. He knows your needs. He knows the weight you carry. But He was teaching you not to let fear become the lord of your future, because a chosen one cannot be led by scarcity and calling at the same time. You are not behind. You are being accelerated through separation. That line is not just comfort, it is correction. You were separated from noise, so you could hear again. You were separated from chaos, so your spirit could stop mistaking anxiety for discernment. The version of you that needed validation did not make it through the test. Something else rose instead. A quieter version, a steadier version, a version that does not need to be loud to be powerful, because heaven does not approve noise. Heaven approves alignment. And now you need to hear this part with an open heart. The tool I will mention later is called the wealth signal. It is not magic. It is not a replacement for prayer. It is not a substitute for obedience, wise action, or faith. It is a short 5-minute audio designed to help move the mind out of stress-heavy beta noise and into a calmer alpha state where clarity, receiving, and grounded action can become easier. Think of it as support for the mind that has carried survival too long. That matters because if the inner system keeps expecting lack, the spirit can receive a promise, while the mind keeps preparing for disaster. God can open a door, but fear can still make a person hesitate at the threshold. That is why you are being taught to receive differently, not wildly, not desperately, not with panic, but calmly, with agreement. You are learning to let your inner state match the season. Heaven is opening, so abundance does not feel like a stranger when it arrives. You passed faster because you stopped fighting the lesson. You still had questions, you still had tears, but you stopped worshipping the old chaos. You stopped calling dysfunction familiar love. You stopped calling panic preparation. You stopped calling self-sabotage humility. That is why this message is not just saying you survived. It is saying you passed. And passing does not mean you were perfect. It means the old pattern was invited to rule again, and this time it could not keep the throne. Now take a breath. Let your spirit recognize what your mind has been trying to explain. Something has ended. Something has opened. The test did not just measure your pain, it measured your readiness. And your readiness is why heaven is moving you into a different assignment. Chosen one. Passing the test was not the end. Passing the test was the moment heaven changed your assignment. That is why your spirit feels different now. Something ended quietly. Something opened quietly. And even if your outer life still looks familiar, the authority over your inner life has shifted. You may think the reward is only that the pain is ending, but that is the surface. The deeper reward is that your inner authority has changed, because the version of you that used to beg for proof no longer has the same control over your decisions. That is why calm may feel strange. A new assignment does not always arrive with applause. Sometimes it arrives as peace. Sometimes it arrives as restraint. Sometimes it arrives as a clean break in your appetite for what used to drain you, because God changes your hunger before He changes your visible location. You asked for the door. God worked on the one who would walk through it. You asked for increase. Heaven prepared the vessel. What is coming cannot be carried by the part of you that only knew survival. So God used pressure to reveal your new foundation. You did not just survive the test, you passed it. Let that land in your spirit. You passed when you chose silence over reaction. You passed when you chose trust over panic. You passed when you refused to return to chains that once felt normal. And because you passed, the assignment changed. You are no longer being trained only to endure. You are being trained to carry. You are no longer being taught only to survive rejection. You are being taught to steward access, favor, provision, and spiritual authority with clean hands. That is why discernment is getting sharper. You can feel what is wrong sooner. You can sense when a conversation is not safe. You can tell when a smile has a hook behind it, because your spirit is no longer begging fear for permission to speak. This is part of the new assignment. God is not only giving you more, He is teaching you how to guard more. More peace requires more boundaries. More influence requires more purity. More abundance requires more wisdom, because what you do not guard can be drained by old access. Your peace is becoming protected. This is not the same peace you had before. This peace has been through fire. It has seen betrayal, delay, disappointment, and fear. Yet it came out with a deeper root, because it is no longer built on everything going your way. Chosen one, your abundance is beginning to recognize you again. When you were living from fear, even good things could feel threatening. When you were trapped in survival, receiving could feel unsafe. But now, your inner posture is changing, and you are learning not to flinch when goodness approaches. You are learning that receiving from God does not make you selfish. Abundance in clean hands becomes service. Provision in alignment becomes stability. Increase under obedience becomes a tool, because God can trust a healed heart to hold what a wounded heart would have wasted. This is one of the greatest shifts after the test. You stop treating struggle as your identity. You stop believing that pain is the only proof of holiness. You stop thinking you must stay empty to stay humble, because true humility does not reject what God sends. Your presence is also changing rooms now, not because you perform, not because you try to impress, but because a person who has passed through hidden fire carries a different weight, and people can feel what God has settled inside them. Some will not understand the shift. Let them misunderstand. Some will say you changed. Let them say it. Some will try to pull you back into the old rhythm. Let them knock, but do not open the door to a season God has already delivered you from. This is where many people fail after passing. They pass the test, then return to the environment that trained the old wound. They receive peace, then trade it for familiarity. They receive confirmation, then ask the wrong people to validate what heaven has already spoken. Do not do that. The assignment changed. Your access must change with it. Your habits must change with it. Your conversations must change with it. Your inner agreement must change with it. Because the next season requires a version of you that does not negotiate with bondage. And now you need to hear this with wisdom. If this message is speaking to the part of you that feels ready to stop living from survival, the link below is for the wealth signal. It is a simple 5-minute audio support for daily alignment. It is designed to help your mind shift out of stress-heavy beta patterns and into a calmer alpha state, where clarity, receiving, and grounded action can become easier. It is not a ritual. It is not a magic promise. It is not a replacement for faith, prayer, or obedience. Dr. Stephen Newton's work is built around the idea that when the brain is locked in survival, abundance can feel distant, even when doors are opening. The wealth signal is for the person who knows God is moving, but also knows their inner world needs support to stop bracing for disaster. You listen for 5 minutes a day. You use headphones. You let the sound support a calmer state while you continue walking with wisdom and obedience. For viewers of this message, the offer is $39, and it includes 4 bonuses with full money-back protection. Do not approach it from desperation. Approach it from agreement. Agreement that the test is over. Agreement that you passed. Agreement that your mind can become quiet enough to receive, while your spirit stays anchored in God and your actions stay grounded in wisdom. Now come back to this moment. Passing the test means heaven can trust you with more than survival. Heaven can trust you with peace. Heaven can trust you with increase. Heaven can trust you with influence that does not corrupt your heart. That does not mean every problem disappears today. It does not mean every door opens at once. It means the training season has produced evidence. It means your spirit has shown that pressure can touch you without becoming your master. And when heaven changes your assignment, your life begins to rearrange. Certain relationships lose their grip. Certain opportunities begin to move closer. Certain old desires lose taste. Certain new responsibilities begin calling your name with a seriousness you cannot ignore. The reward may not look like noise. It may look like clarity. It may look like a calm decision. It may look like courage to say no. It may look like a new opening in your finances, your work, your home, or your purpose that requires a steadier you. Stand still for a moment. Let your spirit catch up to the truth. You are not the same person who entered those 40 days. The old self was invited back, and it did not keep the throne. That is why heaven is amazed. The assignment has changed. The access has changed. The weight has changed. And now, the way you walk must change too, because you cannot carry a new season while still moving like someone who expects only pain. This is where the next part becomes necessary. Now that the assignment has changed, you need to learn how to live after the test without accidentally returning to the version that barely survived it. Chosen one. Now you must learn how to walk after the test. The test is over, but the old pattern may still knock. The assignment has changed, but familiar pressure may still try to call you by the name you had before healing began. Do not be surprised if old doors make noise. Do not be shocked if old voices return. A past test often attracts one final invitation to prove whether you will still honor the boundary after the pressure has lifted. This is where your next level begins, not in noise, not in performance, not in explaining yourself to everyone who noticed your silence. Your next level begins when you keep the same obedience after relief arrives, because many people pass the storm and fail the calm. The first thing you must do is simple. Do not announce the shift too early. Let God establish what He has done before you try to describe it. Some things are too new to be placed in careless hands, and some victories must be protected before they are celebrated. You do not owe everyone an update. You do not owe everyone access. You do not owe everyone the full story of what God did in your hidden season. If they did not have the grace to cover your pain, they may not have the wisdom to handle your breakthrough. The second thing is this. Do not reconnect with what God used to test you. The door may look familiar. The voice may sound gentle. The invitation may arrive with perfect timing. But you must ask one question before you step back inside. Is this alignment, or is this appetite? Is this God leading me, or is this my old hunger asking for one more taste of bondage? Because not every return is restoration, and not every apology is a door you are required to reopen. Some people are sorry because they miss access. Some situations return because they sense your peace. Some habits become louder when they realize they are losing power. Do not mistake a familiar pull for divine direction, because the old chain can still shine if you stare at it too long. The third thing is this. Do not confuse calm with emptiness. You have lived through so much pressure that peace may feel strange. You may wake up and wonder why nothing is chasing you. You may feel stillness and assume something is wrong. But peace is not a warning. Peace is not laziness. Peace is not the absence of purpose. Peace is the ground where your next assignment can finally grow without being strangled by fear, panic, and the need to control every outcome. The fourth thing is this: do not reject abundance because struggle became familiar. Some of you know how to survive lack, but you do not yet know how to receive without guilt. Goodness can feel suspicious. That season is ending. You do not have to apologize for provision. You do not have to shrink when doors open. You do not have to explain why God is being kind to you, because humility does not mean refusing what heaven has chosen to release. When abundance comes, stay wise, stay clean, stay prayerful. But do not sabotage it just to return to a version of life that feels familiar. Familiar does not always mean safe. Sometimes familiar only means your nervous system remembers the cage. The fifth thing is this: do not beg for signs after heaven has already confirmed you, but do not keep asking God to prove what He has already revealed through the test you just passed. You passed through silence. You passed through delay. You passed through reaction. You passed through scarcity. You passed through loneliness, integrity, and receiving. The evidence is not only around you. The evidence is in who you became while nothing seemed to be changing. You are not the same. Say that inside yourself. You are not the same. You may still have healing ahead. You may still have questions, but the throne has changed, because fear is no longer allowed to make every final decision. This is why the old version cannot lead anymore. It can visit, it can whisper, it can remind you of what happened, but it cannot rule unless you hand it the seat again. And chosen one, you have come too far to crown what God already dethroned. The test was not about suffering. It was about alignment. The test was not about being abandoned. It was about learning to trust without constant noise. The test was not about losing everything. It was about being freed from what could not enter the next assignment. Now the open doors will require a different posture. Do not rush. Do not panic. Do not perform. Walk steadily. Move cleanly. Choose wisely. Speak slowly. Protect your peace like it is part of the blessing, because it is. If your finances begin to shift, stay grounded. If new opportunities arrive, stay discerning. If people who ignored you suddenly return, stay prayerful. Not everything that comes after a test is a reward, because some things come to see if the lesson stayed. That is why your inner state matters now. A blessing placed in anxious hands can feel like pressure. A door opened before a fearful mind can feel like danger. But when your spirit is calm, you can receive without shaking and decide without panic. If you feel led to support this new season with a simple daily tool, the link for the wealth signal is below. Use it for 5 minutes a day, not from desperation, but from agreement. Agreement that you are no longer trapped in survival. Agreement that your mind can become quiet enough to receive. Agreement that your spirit can stay anchored while your life expands. Agreement that abundance does not have to feel unsafe anymore, because God can teach you to carry increase with peace, wisdom, and clean hands. The wealth signal is only a support. God is your source. Obedience is still your path. Wisdom is still your guard. But sometimes a chosen one needs help quieting the noise that survival left behind, so clarity can rise again without fear speaking over it. Now breathe. This message is sealing something in you. Not hype, not fantasy, not empty motivation. It is sealing the truth that you passed what was meant to expose the old version, and the old version did not keep the throne. That is why heaven is amazed. Not because you never hurt, not because you never doubted, not because you never cried. Heaven is amazed because the pressure came, and the person who used to be ruled by pressure did not answer the same way. This is your confirmation. The test is over. The assignment has changed. Your peace is protected. Your discernment is sharper. Your abundance has permission to find you, and your spirit is being trained to receive without returning to the cage. Do not go back. Do not shrink. Do not explain your elevation to people who only studied your weakness. Walk humbly, but do not walk small. Walk quietly, but do not walk afraid. Walk wisely, but do not walk like you are still rejected. Now walk like someone heaven has already approved. Walk like someone who passed the test. Walk like someone who does not need the old door to open again. Walk like someone who can receive without fear, obey without applause, and rise without apology. Chosen one. The 40-day test did not destroy you. It revealed you. It separated you. It refined you. And now, with peace in your spirit and wisdom in your steps, you are ready to carry what God could not give to the old version of you.